Hi, I'm Farmer Gil.
And I'm Farmer Chris. This is part 2 of our discussion with Steve Lee of Lee Brothers, an Ocean Spray cooperative farmer from Tabernacle, New Jersey.
In this episode, we discuss Steve's many roles as a public servant, the ongoing legacy of the Lee family, and the many agricultural innovations that have come out of the cranberry industry. Welcome to Farmcast.
Steve, you've done a lot of educating on your own. You've held a lot of different leadership positions at local and state, and then even at kind of in federal committees as well. Can you tell us what's been
why?
Why do
I have no idea.
You have so much going on.
I have no idea.
Yeah, and you have a list of them. So yeah, why?
I thought about that. I sent that bio over to you yesterday, and I was kind of processing that, and
I think there were 10 line items.
Oh, yeah, and that's only ones that went on the bio. The one thing my grandfather said a long time ago is that you have to share your gifts with your community, and it's pretty powerful. Our family has always done that.
Yeah.
Both my dad and my uncle and my grandfather, all three, and we look at it as a responsibility to your community, to our industry, to share your talents and gifts, to be able to make the world of your community a better place. It's as simple as that. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't done that I've been asked to do, but it's a matter of the timing has to be right. The timing has to be good. It has to be at the right time. When your dad came on the county board of ag, it was your uncle, actually. The two of us together had kind of lobbied him to come on because both your uncle and I were on together. And he said, I got to get my brother here. And I said, okay, well, let's make it happen. And we did. Yeah. And he was very successful, and you've been successful as well. And yeah, it's just one of those things where in order to be able to be able to bring value, I think, to your life, you have to be able to share and to share the gifts that God gave you is what it really comes down to. It's important to listen. God gave us 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. Yeah. You're supposed to listen more than you are supposed to talk. I feel uncomfortable because I've been doing a lot of talking. You're asking me a lot of questions, so I feel compelled to answer them. No. And I'm trying to have long answers, so maybe I'll answer it'll avoid me having to answer the question.
No, you're good. We'll rope you back in. We got you.
So, I love kind of your philosophy and your outlook on that. So can you share what is a success story or something memorable from one of these leadership positions that you've held over the years? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, I'm the first person from our family to put their name on a ballot. My dad, my uncle, my dad was on the school board at one point, but I was the first one to put their name on a ballot when I ran for the township committee in Tabernacle. Yeah, that was a pretty big deal. That was a lot different than what we had ever done, any of our family had ever done. Yeah. My grandfather wasn't alive when I made the decision to do that. And sometimes I wish I would have asked him first and gotten his opinion. But I kind of knew deep down that it was something that was important to do. But probably one of the biggest things that I was able to accomplish was when I was the mayor in Tabernacle, we worked hard with Verizon to bring high-speed internet to all of the residents of Tabernacle. Cool. Tabernacle is 49 square miles, and not everyone had high-speed internet. And so there was a program that Verizon was doing called the Bonafide Retail Request Program. And it was set up with the BPU to say if you were a community that was in an area that was underserved, you could petition Verizon as long as you had $25 and you had 100 people that were in an underserved area to be able to get high-speed internet, and Verizon would pay for it. Oh, wow. And so between my father and I, we mobilized, we got maps out, we looked at areas within Tabernacle that were underserved, and I worked with him to bring high-speed internet to Tabernacle.
That's cool.
And what was really neat about it was I just thought it was just what we were doing. It's just another task you're trying to get accomplished. And Noble McNaughton, who is a Tabernacle resident, I think he's currently the mayor in Tabernacle, served on the State Board of Agriculture. He called me and he said, this FiOS thing is a big deal. Everybody can say they were the mayor or they did this or they built that building or did this. He said, what you did with getting high-speed internet to Tabernacle is a really big deal. And then, of course, 2020 happens and COVID happens.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what life would have been like for the school kids in
So
Tabernacle?
what year was that?
Yeah,
that
it's
you did
pretty
that?
amazing.
It was right before I came off. It was 2019, 18,
Oh,
We
wow.
worked on it between 2017 and 2020.
People still in town, they at that point did not have high speed internet.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
pretty
the
amazing.
eastern sections of Tabernacle didn't have it. We didn't have it. Moore's Meadows didn't have it. The Birch's Cranberry Company, Moore's Blueberry and Cranberry, they didn't have it.
So were
areas
you
off
using-
Cranston Road didn't have it.
Were you using satellite internet at that point?
We were
or what?
using little air cards, and we were getting getting a wireless signal
Wow.
is what we used, which was pretty expensive.
So this is right. You have this servant's heart, right? You've had all these amazing roles, and then the other thing I keep hearing from you is that you're kind of harking back to your grandfather and your father and kind of the legacy that they've created, and now you're carrying on. Can you talk about, because you're a sixth generation farmer,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yep.
Can you talk about kind of what that legacy means, stretching back, all the way back to those first generations?
Well, I will say that Tim Russert, who was the moderator for Meet the Press for many years, he probably said it best. He was simply the steward of the chair at Meet the Press.
Mm.
It was just his job to keep it moving and to keep it running. And the way that I look at it is that it's our responsibility to be able to continue the legacy and to essentially leave it better than you found it, become more efficient. That's what our drive has always been, is to be more efficient and to focus on trying to increase the yields. My grandfather would often talk about it didn't matter how many cranberries you grow, it mattered what your yield was. It didn't matter how many acres, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a 30,000 acre farm, but if you're growing 200 barrels an acre, big deal.
Yeah.
Come talk to me when you have higher yields. The yield is the key component.
Mhm.
And the thing about it is that I think it's not an easy thing to do what we do, no matter what you're growing, what your commodity is. But to have the opportunity to be able to farm the same land as your ancestors did,
Mhm.
that's pretty darn special.
Yeah.
I was thinking about your grandfather actually last night, and I remember one of the first times I met him was at Cooperative Growers in Tabernacle. I was waiting to get fertilizer. I was probably about 30, maybe, when I met him for the first time and kind of had an idea who he was. And just very striking, kind, just energetic guy. I remember meeting him for the first time, really, when I had come back to the farm when I was in my early 30s. And here we are sitting here with a podcast, however many years later, both of us in leadership roles, at our own operations. It's pretty special.
Yeah. It's, what you said about like farming the same ground as your ancestors. Sometimes it's emotional. Like sometimes I'll be out in the field, like doing something with the tractor driving down, and it's just like, boom. Or like, I can't believe I'm here doing this, what my grandpa did, what he probably always wanted me to do. And I forget how someone said it one time. It was like, when your kids want to do what you do, that's like the biggest compliment. So it'd be cool if he could see kind of where we are at now, because he passed away. He's over 10 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool to be connected to the farm, and you talk about legacy and stuff like that, and that's really like the goal, right? Is like to leave this legacy and leave the farm better than when I found it, and grow upon the foundation that they started, and then just keep it moving and keep changing and adapting. Like we've changed so much since we've started.
Oh yeah.
Like when my grandpa bought the farm, all we grew was sweet corn. We had no retail operation. And it was really my grandmother who kind of had that idea to go direct to the customer, start out as a wagon on the church in Hartford Road, and kind of the wagon turned into a shed, turned into a building, slowly getting into agritourism, stuff like that. But I think legacy was kind of always on our mind of like, yes, we started out as sweet corn farmers, but that's not where we want to, we don't always have to be sweet corn farmers. We just want to, our main, focus was to serve the customer and give them a great experience. But we wanted, to be here on this land, making our living out here in some form or fashion in agriculture. And, I know what the business looks like today, but when my boys come up, hopefully if they want to come into it, they could be doing something totally different. But
I was fortunate.
Super important.
I was fortunate to be able to. My grandfather was alive for the first probably, I would say probably the first 6 years that I was on the farm on a full-time basis back in the early 2000s, and I was picking one of our bogs during harvest, and my mom had brought him down. He was in his early 90s. My mom had brought him down to watch his harvest, just get him out of the house and take him for a ride, and he was standing on the dam with her, and I just was picking. I was on the picker, which is quite a ways away from where they were standing, and he started to tear up a little bit and said to my mom, I never could have ever dreamed I'd see this.
Yeah.
Didn't think I was going to be talking about that today.
That's amazing.
But it's just one of those things, with cranberries, they're perennials.
Yeah.
So you don't just rip them out and plant something new. The bogs that we have planted now are ones that we've had on the ground since the 90s. That's only because we've completed our renovation schedule with probably 3 years ago was when we renovated our last set of beds. But we were pulling irrigation, and I hit a stump in one of the bogs, which it was just a renovation, so the bog had been there before. But I hit a stump, pretty serious stump, and we had to stop, dig it out, run the irrigation line. And my dad said to me, "Well, that's one that your great-grandfather missed." And it was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I was driving the tractor and actually pulling the irrigation line, I had a little bit of a squiggly line. Didn't quite keep my line up. This before GPSs and all that nonsense. You were using a tree on the horizon to put yourself in a straight line.
Yeah, we still do that.
So I got a little bit of a squiggly irrigation line, and he takes me off the tractor, pulls me up to the top of the dam. He says, "I just want you to look at this and understand the importance of going in a straight line." And he says, "But that'll be your problem."
Yeah.
At this point. So every year I go back and put sprinklers in that same irrigation line that I
that's
made
crazy.
a mess.
My grandpa always, like when we plant, sometimes when you're planting sweet corn, the row will curve a little bit as you go. The curve gets greater, but my grandpa would say you can fit more seeds in a crooked row than a straight row.
That's exactly right.
That's
exactly right.
And if you ever made fun of him for his crooked rows, he'd just flip you off. He didn't care.
Funny.
But irrigation is definitely one of the things that always brings back memories to me too. Because I know when I first started doing irrigation with my grandpa, I was probably like 12 or 13. I remember the valve on the corner of the farm. We had the pump going, so the valve was under pressure. And he's like, "Oh, just open it. You're good." I went to open it, and I didn't realize there was this piece of pipe underground that was cracked. Well, when I opened it, it sent all this pressure to it, and the valve went flying past my head.
Gosh.
And my grandpa was there. He's like, "Oh, we're not going to tell your dad about this one." Yeah, but
Until now.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but every time I drive past it, I think of it. I can even see what he was wearing when we did it. It was crazy. But yeah, just those little things are cool, and people. I think it's so rare that you get to work with your grandpa.
Yeah.
My kids, Chris's kids, they see my dad out there. They ride the tractor with him. They're in the wood shop with him. It's such a rare experience, and it's something that now that I have kids, I don't take it for granted anymore. When I was little, I took it for granted all the time that my grandpa, my grandma were right there and everything. But it's such a cool thing, and I think it really kind of establishes your love for family, and you understand the importance of family and legacy, what you're saying, because I have so many awesome memories with my grandparents because I was around them every day.
Yeah.
All the time.
It is. That's such a unique aspect. Most people in the world, as a teacher, I was driving. I would go away all day and then come back. And, my kids knew I taught, but that was it. So, yeah, that family connection is pretty amazing.
And I think that brings a lot of people back to the farm. And that's why a lot of generational farms are still going. Because like, you know, when I came back, I've mentioned this before, I just kind of ended up here because I dropped out of college and I was an idiot. And I was like, I knew my dad would give me a job. I mean, I would hope he would. So, and then
You were lucky.
I grew into the business and everything. But now having kids, like it's not about me anymore. You know, like it's cool that I can try to build this future and this opportunity for my children. And whether they want to come into it or not, I hope they do. But it's just cool to be able to have direct impact on that. And I think that's what keeps me here and will always keep me here is that.
The thing that's important is to make sure you're happy doing it.
Yeah.
And don't do it just because it's a legacy. That's a pressure you can put on yourself very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I worked blueberries. Blueberries is where I'd done probably worked the most and spent a little bit of time on cranberries as a kid growing up. But I was a cocky 16-year-old, and I met with a guidance counselor at the high school, and he says, "What are you gonna do with your life?" I said, "I'm gonna grow cranberries. I'm gonna be on the farm." He says, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yep, that's my plan." So then, a couple of weeks later, I'm in the basement, my grandfather's house, got my hair cut. He always cut our hair.
Oh yeah.
And he says, "Yeah, what's this I hear you want to be a farmer?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you told your guidance counselor you want to be a farmer." And I said, "Yeah, I guess I did." He says, "Well, let me tell you something. If you ever want to come back here on the farm, that's fine, but you're going to go out and punch time clock first and go work somewhere else before you ever come back here."
Mm-hmm.
And he said it in a kind way, but he wanted to make sure I knew that he was paying it. He wanted to make sure I knew he was paying attention.
Yeah.
But what he was essentially telling me was, in a simple way, is that if you want to come back and do this, that's fine, but you need to go out and punch time clock and understand what the rest of the world is like.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not shortchanging yourself. And that was a phenomenal piece of advice, because that's essentially what I did before I came back to the farm. I mean, my farm life has only been since 2000 on a full-time basis. I've got a whole other career and a whole other education, before that. And my sons are the same way. My youngest son, Patrick, is 20. He works in the assembly here in New Jersey. And my other son, Andrew, is 22 and has been working on the farm, both of them growing up, but Andrew now works in Cincinnati for a lighting company. And he's made it clear he wants to come back someday.
Yeah.
But we said the same thing with him. You got to go out and punch time clock and see the world and see what it's like and make sure it's something you want to do. Because I think what it does is it gives you a reinforcement, the appreciation for being able to have your own business and be able to do what you do every day, do what we do every day at this point.
Yeah.
I think the other major value of that is you get experience in these different industries or these different ways of thinking, and then you're able to come back to the family farm and draw in some of those learning, some of those experiences.
Yeah.
So, for you worked in hospitality for 10 years prior. Was there anything that you learned there that you were able to kind of draw into what you do now, or anything that left a mark on you?
Yeah, that's a pretty radical change in career paths. I mean, you were in like hotels and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I worked for everybody from Mickey Mouse to Donald Trump. Literally. I was at Disney for 2 years. I worked for...
What did you do at Disney?
I worked at the Walt Disney World Dolphin. It's one of the 4 hotels that are connected to Epcot. And I worked in what we call an IBU, or an individual business unit, but I essentially was a manager at the Coral Cafe, which is a restaurant, and then also room service. And I was there for almost 2 years. And then when I was in college, I was a room service waiter at Trump Castle in Atlantic City.
Wow.
And it was right around the time that Donald Trump was having an affair with Marla Maples. And Marla was staying at our hotel for the month of July with her mother. And they were pretty much locked up in their suite for the better part of the week. And then Mr. Trump would come down in his helicopter on the weekends. And we had the press in the lobby, and her order for breakfast was one that you did not want to get because you were not going to get tipped on it.
Oh, really?
And one day, of course, me, being the, I was the youngest kid there. I ended up getting the order, so I had to take breakfast up to her one day, and got took breakfast up to her, was just chatting with her a little bit,
Mhm.
and I was thinking I couldn't imagine being her, having to be kind of cooped up in a hotel room with photographers waiting for you in the lobby, and everyone wanted to know why you're running around with Donald Trump. It was a bit of it was an educational experience.
Yeah, that is a world. How old were you when you were doing that?
22, I think.
Jeez.
22, 23, something like that.
What a story.
Wow, you should talk about that more often. You could I think that soundbite right there may get us like a million.
That is
you think so?
wild.
Yeah.
So was there, a lot of what you did was probably interacting with, customers and with people. So does that help you working at the cranberry farm now, or does it help you in your leadership roles, at the state
It
level?
actually, I'll tell you what it's done. It's, I've been able to take, so I have a degree in hospitality management.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business degree at the end of the day. So business principles are the same no matter what type of a business it is. So I've been able to take those lessons learned from the business degree and the experience I had in business and apply them to our own business.
Yeah.
I do the accounting and do a lot of the book work at our farm now, and we actually brought on someone to help with that, so I can spend more time out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I think, one of the things I've been able to do is take that experience and apply it in different components of what we do. So, for example, at one point I was the president of the state of the Burlington County Board of Agriculture, and this is before the second farm opened over at Locust Hall, and we had a legislators event here, 2 buildings down. Actually, is where we did it, and so I put that together, planned it, organized it, kind of put things together, and so that was one of those things where I was taking off my farmer hat and putting on my hospitality hat. I do the lunches for the growers associations and whatnot for cranberries, but whenever we do tours at our farm, I put that hospitality hat back on, and I think that was really beneficial with the public speaking component and having to work with the public every day. You get skills that you wouldn't get necessarily otherwise. So
Hospitality, we talk about that nonstop here at the farm, especially in this day and age, when you see hospitality lack in so many areas and a lot of places you go, we find it our mission to up our level in it to separate us from.
Which you do a very good job of.
Thank you.
You really do.
It's interesting that we're very customer facing business. We deal directly with the general public, but you're like a wholesale operation in the middle of the Pine Barrens, and hospitality is still important to you. Because at the end of the day, if you're not hospitable to people, you're not nice to people, no one's going to want to do business with you. So it's cool to see how that can be used in other aspects and how important it is across the board.
And it goes back to what I said at the beginning of our discussion today, is it's about relationships with people who are outside of what we do. It's relationships with the public. It's relationships with legislators. I preach to a lot of the county boards that I work with at the state board level. Outreach on your farm is really, really critical because it's about developing relationships with the public and understanding about what we do to make, to essentially improve the commodity, improve the industry. But it's all about being nice.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Some people really struggle with that.
And I can understand that. I mean, I get it. I certainly get it. But yeah, you get a lot farther in life being nice.
Yeah, you do. I know, for some people, it's hard to open up their farms, especially the way we do, and let people come to it. Because some people hold their land so near and dear to their heart when they see it disrespected, and it happens to me too. It upsets me. But remember, my grandma would always say, we have something so special here. Why would we not share it?
Yeah.
That's a good, great quote.
And she would always
Great
kind of
quote.
say that. And that really, I remember that a lot. Now, certain business decisions and stuff like that, that like, what we're doing is like sharing this little piece of paradise or piece of heaven that we got with our customers. And sometimes it's difficult. It is.
Yeah.
You see someone climb a peach tree and that branch snaps. Oh, my heart.
Yeah.
It hurts. But it's just
luckily that's like the 0.01%.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen a lot.
99.9%.
But you can't let those people.
Yeah, you get kids digging in the dirt. They're pulling up radishes and they're seeing a radish come out of the ground for the first time ever. It's a
beautiful thing.
It's always amazing that to some customers, some kids, especially on school tours, that there's food popping out of the ground. And they get to see it, and they get to see the dirt on it, and they get to put it in a quart and take it home, and that's really special.
Yeah.
So Steve, you talked a lot about your legacy, not just in terms of what it makes you today, but also your father, your grandfather. There's been a lot of innovation throughout your family's history. Can you talk a little bit about some different technologies, different innovations, different things that have come up in the cranberry industry over the past 100 years, whatever it might be?
First of all, cranberry growers copy off of each other. That's the first thing I'll say.
Yeah. Good copying.
And we share information. That's the thing about farming is that farmers pretty much get along with each other.
Yeah.
And if they reach out to help each other, which is important. I think it's about relationships. I can remember in 2012, Labor Day weekend 2012, we had 17 inches of rain that hit our area of the pines, and we had a lot of water we had to get rid of in a short period of time. And our neighbors to the north, who didn't get as much rain as we did, started to bring down equipment. Chris, a fully pumped to help pump the water off the bogs, and we would get phone calls, and we had folks lined up to help us. That was a pretty big deal. Innovation, I would have to say, I'll go back to the frost monitoring component. I've had a lot of conversations with you about, and your dad about how to monitor for frost and what do we need to do. And so one of the things we've done at our farm is we've done a lot of work with remote sensing. I can pull up my phone and look at 30 different locations right now of what the real-time temperature is, what the wind speed is, what the wind direction is, the soil moisture, what the solar radiation numbers are. We're doing soil temperature right now because I'm in the process of getting herbicide applied. So we want to make sure the soil temperature is at the right number. We weren't doing that 10 years ago. We weren't doing that 15 years ago. Nothing remotely close to it. So one of the things that we do now is we're able to grow and be able to produce cranberries more efficiently because of all the data we'd be able to acquire and be able to utilize. At the end of the day, our focus is on efficiency. And with the temperature monitoring system that we've put together ourselves, we've borrowed this and borrowed that and thought about this and that, we've been able to really reduce the amount of time it takes to understand the status of where your crop really is, where are we weather-wise. I pay a lot of attention to what the Weather Channel says and what Fox Weather says and what the National Weather Service says. But at the end of the day, we have our own station set up at the farm to be able to monitor what is happening with the crop. That's far and away a lot more than what we did when I first came on the farm 25 plus years ago.
Yeah. I think some people, it's hard for them to kind of comprehend how much the weather can change or temperature can change in such a small area. Like your program, wake up, you look at your phone, it says it's 40 degrees outside, but at the low end of our peach orchard, it could have dipped down to 32. It's just crazy how that happens. You talk about that innovation on your farm, Steve, and a lot of the stuff we've put here, we've actually gotten from cranberry guys. So you guys are kind of like, you're a leader in especially the weather control and the weather monitoring and stuff like that. You know, if you want to talk to someone who knows all about frost, you talk to a cranberry guy.
Yeah. So when you're like along those lines, Steve, are you measuring these by bog or kind of by section of your farm? Do you have instruments in every bog or on every dam or?
Yeah, I was actually going to pull up the SCADA system, which will really simplify it, and I thought I had it open here. But I can look at our farm right now and look at all the temperatures throughout the farm.
Yeah.
Right now, it's monitoring. The thing we're probably most concerned about right now is soil moisture and what the moisture content is, and also what the temperatures. Temperatures probably aren't as critical now on a day like today, but tonight they sure would be if the clouds went out. We'd be very concerned about what the temperatures were. But right now, it's all about the soil. We pulled the water from the bogs 2 weeks ago, yesterday, and now we're kind of watching stuff start to grow a little bit. We've got some buds that have started to break. We've got some weeds that have popped up, which I'm kind of focused on right now. But it's all about the soil in terms of what the soil temperatures and the soil conditions are. But the one thing that's really important is that we pay attention from now until we go out and pick the bog. It's the kind of thing where cranberries don't stop growing on weekends. They don't stop growing on 4th of July. I did an interview with Forbes magazine back during the pandemic, and they want to know, well, how is this affecting the cranberries? I said, the cranberry plants aren't reading the newspaper. They don't care. They're still coming. The crop is still coming. We still have to buy fertilizer. We still have to buy, pay for fungicides and whatnot. So it's still happening. So it's a kind of thing where you have to monitor it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you said take the water off the bogs. And so you flood them for harvest in, what was that, October?
Yep.
September, October?
Yep.
You leave the water on all winter long?
We do. We pick the bog and then we drain it.
Okay.
And then we will sometimes go out and rake areas that have a lot of excess growth. And have different conditions and whatnot, but then we will flood usually right around Thanksgiving, week after Thanksgiving. We'll leave the water on from Thanksgiving until the middle part of April.
And what's the reasoning for that?
Is to protect the buds from freezing because they're perennials. And so we're essentially growing 18 months of work in one crop at the end of the day. So right now we have buds that are broken that formed actually last summer. And so it's important to keep those buds alive. So what's happened is that right now we have buds that have developed and we overwintered them underwater. They're quite happy. We've got the water off. We've got some sunshine. We've got some dry weather. They're extremely happy now. And in probably about mid part of July, going into August, we will have what we call bud set for the following crop. So as the plant grows, it's producing fruit. At the same time, it's producing a bud for next year's crop.
So who discovered this whole thing of flooding the bogs?
It was a...
Because that's just like... For me, and I know the things we grow, if I flooded a field, that would be the worst thing ever. Like, how did that happen?
So... the first Stephen Lee that came from Ireland in the 1860s was an engineer by trade, and found that if you put dams around the bogs because the cranberries are growing naturally along the streams, and if you built dams and you could protect them, protect the areas, that would do the trick, and it would preserve what was there. The Massachusetts story is pretty interesting. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, I would say. There was a cranberry harvester that came down from Massachusetts that was a water harvester, because at the time, all we were doing was scooping cranberries. That's how you would get fresh cranberries, that you'd be out with a hand scoop.
Oh, okay.
This water harvesting stuff is new. It's been since the late 50s and early 60s, and I think it was Bill Haynes Sr. that brought a machine down from Massachusetts to develop it and to try it and look at it, and it got 100% of the crop. And that very day, the story is that the Cutts family went into their shop immediately and started building one. My uncle built one that was a first riding machine, because most of them were walk behind what we call knockers, but walk behind machines. And my uncle, at the age of 17, built one that was you could ride on, then increase the overall path that it would go. One thing for the podcast, I think it would be good if we had if I had like
some images.
Yeah, if I had some images.
Oh yeah, we can definitely drop some.
Send them over.
Yeah.
We'll drop them in.
Or better yet, a live podcast from the farm.
Oh yeah, you want to go on the?
in October.
Put some bibs on.
Yeah, we could do that.
That'd be
easily
amazing.
do that.
Don't fall.
So hold on, I'm mind blown by cranberries. I
Just
just
look on Chris's face is like, oh my god, what just happened?
I didn't realize. So
are we done yet?
So
Almost.
harvest is
10 minutes.
Is like October-ish.
Yes, we harvest from them. We usually start the end of September going into October.
So you're harvesting the fully developed fruit, obviously, but at the same time, there's buds that you will harvest the next year. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So then after you harvest the fruit, that September, October, you overwinter them underwater. And then, oh my gosh. So this plant is just constantly growing all the time.
Yes.
So that's what you mean when you say you're essentially working 18 months of this crop in 1 year.
I think we could probably do just an entire cranberry episode.
I
have so many more questions about cranberries.
So I pulled up, this is for your benefit. You can look at this after we're done talking, but this is a video that was done by a husband and wife team from New York, and they were interested in cranberries. They have a feature called How Does It Grow? And they go to a farm and look at how different commodities are grown, how different plants are grown. And they came and did us 1 year, and we had the most hits on our feature than any other one they'd ever done. And then they did a second one on cranberries, and it summarizes it. So I set that up so you can watch it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I think because it's like cranberry is just one of those things where people mainly consume it as juice, so there may not be that connection to the fruit, and then not how it's grown, and it's so interesting and foreign because, like you were saying, it only grows in 5 states. So if you're in one of the other 45 states, you may never even drive past a cranberry bog. Here in New Jersey, if you're going to the shore, you're probably driving through cranberry bogs.
Right.
So it's always on our mind, even though I've been driving through my whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm just now learning pretty much how it all works out there. But it's cool.
We ought to have like a swap program where you come and work on a cranberry farm for a day.
Well, you're in the hospitality business. What do they call that? Staging? Like a restaurant?
Staging?
Is that what it's called?
Sounds fancy to me. I don't know.
Your restaurant staff goes and works at another restaurant and then they come back.
Oh, I
never heard that.
Can we do it? We should start it.
I may have just sounded like an idiot by misspelling the word.
It sounds so fancy.
It does. I just made it up myself. But
that's awesome.
So just to reel it back in and to kind of start summarizing, what would you say to someone who wants to get into farming?
So I watched Matt's podcast.
Yeah.
We interviewed Matt. I thought he gave a really good answer, and I think his story is really remarkable.
Yeah.
Truly remarkable. I think that you've got to have an understanding of how challenging it can be.
Mm-hmm.
People like the idea of farming, but you have to have certain expectations. If you want to be successful and you want to be able to raise a family doing it, you have to understand what your limitations are going into it and know what your resources are and your expectations are. It's not for everybody. Working in a family business is not for everybody. Unless you've actually experienced it, it's hard to really understand what it's like. And farming is hard. It's not, everybody likes the idea of farming. People that come here to visit for tours, they like the idea of going on a hayride and being at a farm. I've been a farmer for a day. Yes, technically, I guess you can say you've been a farmer for a day. But to do what we do and to have to try to make a living from it is a different story. And it's very challenging, especially where we live.
Mm-hmm.
So I would certainly encourage anyone that wants to do it, but I would strongly urge them to make sure they know what they're getting into. Working for somebody else is always beneficial to learn it, to understand it before you really make an effort. But I think everybody, to an extent, is a farmer, whether you have tomato plants on your back porch, at your condo in Mount Laurel, or whether you've got a beehive in your backyard in Chesterfield, doesn't matter. Everyone has some sort of a tie to the land at some level. We just happen to have a bigger piece and a lot more responsibility as stewards of the land.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, what you said is great. I think some people, they get that vision of, they think they want to be a farmer, which is cool. I think, a lot of times when people want to be a farmer, it's like a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
You're working with the land, you're in control, which it's true.
Yeah.
But
you're not.
But Mother Nature is your business partner.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
That's a whole other thing. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. 100% possible. It's just, mindset, being able to change and adapt. I think you have to have a super thick skin to be a farmer, because I know that's something I've struggled with through the years, and it's not as thick as I want it to be at the moment. But I don't want people to be discouraged by when we try to be real about it, because, people will be like, oh, here's a bunch of farmers. They don't want anyone else to get into farming. I don't know why I put that accent on. But
there's such a neat network. This is what's really, I guess, been a surprise to me as I've gotten more involved, is there's such a tight network of people who are willing to help, like you were saying before, willing to kind of show you the ropes, willing to let you come and work on the farm in order to figure things out. So the opportunities are there just to start figuring things out if anybody does want to get into farming. And who knows where things will be in 20 years. There's always innovations, there's always changes, there's always opportunities that'll spring up that we just don't know about now.
Yeah, maybe in 20 years, New Jersey will be the cheapest place to farm.
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Or we won't be farming at all.
Yeah.
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 So
to be realistic, that's certainly possible.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting point. What do you think, or where do you see Lee Brothers in 20 years?
I'm trying to figure out what Lee Brothers is doing this afternoon. Am I gonna spray? Am I gonna spray tonight when I get home, or am I gonna spray tomorrow morning?
Early and often normally is the answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, our hope is certainly to continue to do what we're doing with another generation. Ideally, it's what we want to do, but it doesn't come easy. It doesn't come without a lot of effort and a lot of work. Mm-hmm. One thing I would say to somebody that's thinking about farming: plan not to get an income for a couple months out of the year. Yeah, and that's one thing that people don't quite understand. Mm-hmm. I was talking with a good friend of ours that is in the agriculture industry here in Brunton County, and they are going to start strawberries tomorrow, which is exciting, but it's a lot of work, but it's where their income comes from. And they have to be able to make their income in the next 5 weeks to last them throughout most of the year. Yeah. And that's one thing that I think people need to understand, is that they don't just get a paycheck every week if you're farming. Yeah. You got to find a way to be able to survive on a lot less than most.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, I think we definitely need to have you back. I think my head is spinning with a million other things I could talk to you about.
I want to go out to your farm.
I don't know that we even talked about anything you wanted to talk about, did we?
I don't know if we did either.
Yeah.
We always want to talk about what we talk about.
We avoided topics. I'm quite pleased we avoided topics. So
you've left us with more questions than answers.
I don't want to say that I steered the conversation intentionally, because I didn't, but I'm kind of happy with
Chris was anxious to talk to you because he didn't know you.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, we're gonna kick back. Steve talks a lot. Yeah. Or leave on.
No, I love it. I learned a ton, but I really do like the idea of us coming out to your farm next. I want to get on one of the big.
I'm coming to the harvest. I want to bring my boys out to the harvest this year.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't think you've ever been out during harvest.
I've driven past when I'm going fishing. So flying through. I'm
It's
like,
funny, you know,
harvesting.
the Johnson family has to drive past our place to get to their place down on the other side of the
on the river.
on the river, and I want every once in a while I'll see one go by, or all of a sudden a bag of corn shows up on the steps or whatever, and I'll get a note, get a text message, toll has been paid. We've considered putting a toll booth on 563. Haven't quite managed that yet.
We'll fill it up. But all right, thanks, Steve. We appreciate your time.
Thank
and
you for
everything.
coming out.
And we will see you down for harvest.
Yeah, I'll be there.
We'll do a
I love it.
podcast live from the bog.
Oh, that would be
It was good
amazing.
enough. It's been good enough for Good Morning America. It's been good enough for Good Morning Japan.
We're not picky. Good
And
morning,
NBC.
Japan.
Good morning, Japan. What time is morning in Japan here?
Morning in Japan is about 5:00 p.m. our time.
Oh, so
We did.
Oh, that is
we
great.
broadcast. This is a true story. We broadcast live from one of our bogs on Good Morning Japan. It was about 5-6 o'clock, and it was pouring rain. It was miserable, but we were feeding back live to Tokyo
No way.
from our bog.
Was that
yeah.
recently?
It was probably 10 years ago.
Oh, that is
Jeez.
super cool.
Wait,
Yeah.
Like why cranberries? Why you? Did Tokyo want to?
Well, we did it.
Tokyo
We
wants
did
Steve
well.
Wade.
One of the things that we do as part of the co-op is any kind of media outreach. We do. That's
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's really good about our company is that we utilize the farmers in any way we can to be able to tell our story. And at the time, our international sales was growing considerably, and we had an opportunity to be able to have ocean spray and have cranberries on the front page news in Tokyo. And so
That's awesome.
they said, "Would you be willing to do a live feed from?" Sure.
Why not?
Yeah. Go
All
up
right,
to
well,
Rockefeller Center. Go up and do the bog up at Rockefeller Center. I've done that. I've done one in London. Done one in the UK, Jamaica. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if any of them are listening, Farmer Gill's willing to travel,
Yeah.
and I'll be on
We
Good
haven't
Morning
had
Tokyo.
Good Morning Japan here yet.
No,
Yeah.
come on
We're going
out.
to do that.
Yeah, I live here. You know where to find me.
Absolutely. But I think you ought to come out for the harvest and
Yeah,
actually see
for
what it's
sure.
all about. So
We'll get out
Chris
there,
can get a
dude.
lot of his questions answered.
Yes.
Yeah. My eyes are still super wide.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
Thank you, boys. Good work.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We're trying.
Thanks for doing this.
We're trying. But all right.
Send us out.